Hi guys, last week we were learning to compare fractions using equivalence. It's difficult to compare 1/2 with 3/8, but by using equivalence we can compare these easily. We can convert 1/2 into 4/8 and 4/8 is greater than 3/8, so 1/2 is greater than 3/8. Today we're learning to add fractions and our understanding of equivalence is going to help us once again. To begin with, let's get thinking. I'd like you to count the fractions with me. 1/2, 2/2, 3/2, 4/2, 5/2. What would be the same as 5 half pizzas? Pause the video for a couple of minutes, discuss that with a partner, and then share your ideas with the rest of the class. Instead of having 5 half pizzas, we could put 2 of those halves together to make one whole pizza. So now we've got one whole pizza and 3 halves, which is the same as the 5 halves we started with. Or we could take the next 2 half pizzas and again put them together to form one whole pizza. So we've got 2 whole pizzas and 1 half, which is exactly the same as the 5 half pizzas that we started with. Next, I'd like you to have a go at counting the fractions. You can pause the video at any time and see how many different ways you can have exactly the same amount of pizza. Let's try counting the fractions again. This time we're counting in quarters. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, 5/4, 6/4. Once again, I'd like you to pause the video and can you discuss with a partner what would be the same as 6/4? How many different ways could you get exactly the same amount of pizza? Instead of having 6/4, we could take 4 of those quarters to put them together to make one whole. So 6/4 is exactly the same as one whole pizza and 2 quarters. Or we could take those 2 quarters and put them together to make 1/2. So we've got 1.5 pizzas, which is exactly the same as the 6/4. Or we could split that whole pizza and make 2 halves. So instead of 6/4, we've now got 3 halves. Or we could change them back to quarters again and we've got 4 quarters and 1 half. There are lots of different ways that we can cut those portions in order to get exactly the same as 6/4. I'd like you to have a go at counting again. This time you're counting in quarters, and once again pause the video at any time and see how many different ways you can find that are exactly the same as that number of quarters. It's time to get investigating with a partner. For this, you're going to need ideally a set of fraction cards for the class. If you don't have fraction cards, you can manage with post-it notes, paper strips, or even sheets of paper. I've got 3 problems that I'd like you to discuss with a partner. Homer has 2.5 chocolate bars. Peter has 3.5 chocolate bars. How much chocolate do they have altogether? Lisa has 3/4 of a cookie. Groot has 3/4 of a cookie. How many cookies do they have altogether? And the third question, Han has half a donut. Luke has 1/4 of a donut. How many donuts do they have altogether? So use fraction cards if you've got them to solve these problems, and draw bars and pictures to help you explain your thinking. Pause the video for 8 to 10 minutes, have a go at those, and then share your thoughts with the rest of the class. Let's discuss that first problem. Homer has 2.5 chocolate bars. Peter has 3.5 chocolate bars, and we want to know how much they've got altogether. So let's use those fraction cards to represent what Homer's got. Theirs are 2 wholes and 1 half, and then Peter, who's got 3 wholes and 1 half also. Now it's easy to add the whole chocolate bars. We've got 2 wholes plus 3 wholes, so we've got 5 chocolate bars altogether. Next, let's add those halves together. 1 half plus 1 half is 2 halves. So they've got 5 whole chocolate bars and 2 halves altogether, but those half bars can be put together to make 1 whole bar, so we can also say that they've got 6 whole chocolate bars. Let's have a look at that second problem. Lisa has 3/4 of a cookie, Groot has 3/4 of a cookie, and once again we want to know how much they've got altogether. So let's use our fraction cards to represent Lisa's quarters, and 3 more quarters to represent Groot's cookies. 3/4 plus 3/4 is 6/4, so we can say that they've got 6 quarter cookies altogether. But we can also give this answer in another way. If we take one of Groot's quarters and put it with Lisa's 3/4, then we've made 4 quarters, and 4 quarters together makes 1 whole cookie. So we can also say that they've got 1 whole cookie and 2 quarters. But again, we can find another way to represent this. We can take those 2 quarters, we can put them together to make 1 half cookie. So we can also say that they've got 1.5 cookies. So each of those answers is correct because 6/4 is the same as 1 whole and 2 quarters, which is the same as 1.5 cookies. Let's have a look at the third problem. Han has half a donut and Luke has 1/4 of a donut, and once again we want to know how much we've got all together. This is going to be a bit trickier because this time we've got 2 different fraction types. We've got halves and quarters. Now when I try and add them together, I can't say that I've got 2 halves and I can't say I've got 2 quarters because those are different things that we're trying to add together. However, this is where we can use our understanding of equivalence, because we can take that 1 half and we can half it. And when we half it, we make 2 quarters. Now all the fraction types are the same. So instead of having 1 half and 1/4, we've actually got 2 quarters plus 1/4. And 2 quarters plus 1/4 is 3 quarters. It's time to discuss our success criteria. How did we achieve success? So with a partner, I want you to have a think about the steps that you can go through to add fractions together. So pause the video for 2 to 3 minutes, discuss that with your partner, and then share your ideas with the rest of the class. When we want to add fractions together, the first thing we can ask ourselves is, are the fractions the same type? Here we're adding 3/4 plus 3/4. So yes, the fractions are the same type. In this case, we can simply add those fractions together. 3/4 plus 3/4 gives us 6/4. Now at this stage, we might want to convert that to equivalent. 6/4 is correct, but we could also change that into 1 whole and 2 quarters, or 1 whole and 1 half. What if the fractions aren't the same type? Here we're trying to add 1/4 and 1 half. Well, if that's the case, we need to use equivalence to make the fractions the same type in order that we can add them together. That 1 half is the same as 2 quarters. Now that we've converted them to the same type, we can add the fractions together. And 1/4 plus 2 quarters gives us 3 quarters. It's time to try that out. Can we apply that success criteria in order to solve the following? Here we've got 3 sets of questions once again, but we're answering 4 questions each time. So for example, if you want to do the first set of questions, then question 1 is asking us, what is 1 whole plus 1 half? If you want to do the second set of questions, question 2 is asking us, what is 1.25 plus 2 quarters? And if you want to do the third set of questions, then question 3 is asking us, what is 1.33 plus 1.33? Use resources to help you solve these, and then draw pictures and bars in order to explain your thinking. If you manage those in the time, why don't you have a go at making up 3 fraction addition problems for someone else to solve? Pause the video for 10 minutes or so and have a go at those. It's time to reflect on today's learning, so with a partner or as a class, I'd like you to think about the following questions. What have you learned today? What did you find easy or difficult? Did you get stuck? What helped you when something got tricky? What do you need more help with? What is really making you think? And what are your next steps? The last thing I'm going to ask you to do today is, can you apply what we've learned? So as a class, I'd like you to discuss, analyse and solve the following problem. Rocket has half a bar of chocolate, Groot has a quarter of a bar of chocolate, and Mantis has an eighth of a bar of chocolate. So we can use those fraction cards to represent those, and I want to know how much chocolate do they have altogether. Thanks for joining me again today. I hope you enjoyed that. As ever, you can contact me at scott.morrow@southayrshire.gov.uk if you've got any questions or you'd like to share your solutions to today's lesson. And you can follow me on Twitter @ScottMorrowSA. Next week, we're going to be continuing with fractions and again looking at equivalence. However, this time we're going to be looking at different ways that we can share out one whole. I hope you can join me then.